victimes, de citoyens également du monde. Quand je parle de citoyens du monde, il y a tous ceux qui sont de la diaspora qui vraiment vont intégrer le dispositif pour qu'on puisse vraiment travailler d'arrache-pied pour rendre vivante la mémoire de nos chers disparus. Donc lolo waral bëgg naa ngeen tàccu bu baax a baax ñëpp ci liggéey bu mucc ayib bu ñuy def. Alors il est prévu aujourd'hui par rapport à ce programme de revenir sur la synthèse en anglais de la présentation qui a été faite hier, parce que vous le savez tous, le naufrage a engendré 12 nationalités confondues. Alors il serait bien de maximiser sur la communication pour que les gens puissent nous entendre, comprendre également 23 ans après qu'est-ce qui a été fait. C'est important vraiment d'avoir ici la présence d'un étudiant, d'un citoyen, d'un acteur également de développement à qui dans les plus brefs délais nous l'avions contacté pour venir faciliter la présentation en anglais. Il n'a pas remué d'un iota. Donc, donc, vous voyez pourquoi il est important de valoriser la crème qui est là. On n'a pas besoin de chercher ailleurs des gens pour venir faire la facilitation. C'est un produit de cette université, c'est un produit communautaire, donc il a jugé nécessaire d'apporter sa pierre à la contribution pour, en tout cas, la mémoire de ses victimes. Lol motax ngeen gis ko fini dina def la synthèse buñ fa jógee tamit il est prévu également à ce qu'on puisse rendre, avant de rendre hommage, je pense que ça a été fait hier, donc il est prévu que l'équipe des sentinelles, parce qu'il faut le dire, les artistes sont des sentinelles, les garants de la paix et de la prévention. C'est à eux que nous devons tous féliciter, et sous vos applaudissements, les amis, il faut les applaudir. Vous savez pourquoi? L'artiste n'est pas la parole. L'artiste, c'est l'image. L'artiste, c'est un sentinelle. L'artiste, c'est quelqu'un qui œuvre pour la consolidation de la paix et de la cohésion sociale. À travers les œuvres artistiques, on s'est recueilli. À travers les œuvres artistiques, on s'est souvenu encore de cette mémoire. Donc, Begana vraiment, Guissé qui a fait un très long trajet avec l'équipe, Begana Ngen Tachuko Bouba, Haba. L'ambassadeur Cheikh Mbeng, qui a fini de faire ses preuves également au Sénégal, il a été coopté pour honorer la mémoire et il travaille d'arrache-pied pour, en tout cas, défendre une cause noble des familles de victimes et naufragés du bateau le Joola. Donc, je voudrais également, même si le rescapé, le président des rescapés n'est pas là, à son absence, prononcer ces quelques mots pour leur dire, même s'ils ne sont pas là, mais ils sont présents. La cause demeure la cause de tout le monde, aussi bien pour les rescapés et aussi bien pour les familles. Merci à vous tous d'être venus. Merci. Habib, nous vous donnons la parole pour la synthèse en anglais.
Thank you so much. Des applaudissements pour lui. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Serid Abib Sen, and I'm a student, as he is coming to say, in Asansek University in Foreign Languages Department. It's a great honor for me to be here in front of you. Oh, sorry. It's a great honor for me to be here in order to let you know and coming back again about the tragedy that the Senegalese has known. All right. So through the Joola's history. And that's what we are going to see today. This is the 23rd year anniversary memorial conference on the Joola's tragedy. And we will come back to all aspects related to that tragedy. So we should all know that The tragedy is Africa did less to civil maritime disaster. This is also one of the most devastating in the world because 26 September 2002, 1,953 passengers have passed away through the sea. And only 64 survivors we do have. So it is a tragedy, as you know, that left a deep mark on Senegal and beyond. Slide. So why this conference at the university? As you know, the university is a place of reflection and deep thinking. That's why the National Association of Families of Victims and Survivors of Joola had chosen the university to hold these activities because we expect to get from students a deep understanding about that history. And because also the university is a place to ensure academic spaces, and it is also to educate the future leaders and citizens, and to keep alive the lessons of the national tragedy. Because it's really mandatory to know that the young people who is studying here at Asansek University should know the story that are behind that tragedy. Slide. And of course, we are going to ask a question. What happened really on the night of September 26, 2002? So, on that date, ferry designed for only 550 people. Keep it in mind. So, the ferry was designed for only 550 people. But unfortunately, it carried over 1,953 passengers. That's so much. And there was not only Senegalese people, there was around 16 different nationalities coming all over the world and took that ship for their trip. And 444 was student, and they gone by leaving behind them their families because that was breadwinners, and they was going to university for getting knowledge and coming back to their families for supporting them. And those 444 students was also passed away. 27 young footballers, because a football academic from Michel Jata was gone to Gore Island for participating to some matches. Unfortunately, that team was taken the ship, and as you think, so there was also be part of those who live their lives. And only 64 survivors rescued, over 551 bodies recovered, over 1,400 people still riding over the sea. Slide. And naturally, they left behind them some consequences. But before diving into those consequences, we should know exactly what are the causes of that problem. So, technical failure, because flat bottom ferry unsuitable for open sea. So before the boards left Ziguinchor to go to Dakar, they already know that there was some issues, some problems, so technical failures. Instead, so they allow people to take the board. So navigability issues, because there was no authorizations at the repents, because the problem was already signaled through the authority, but they do not care about the problem that was signaled, and they let the people to take the board. And massive overload, because capacity for only 500 and stuff people was allowed to take the board, but there was going beyond on that number, and almost 2,000 people was taking the board. So do you imagine how that was a great problem that we did not really pay attention on that issue? And unfortunately, so that was also delayed rescue operation because we took 20 hours before a military arrival. So just imagine, so the boat got down to the water, and after 20 hours, so the military arrived. So just imagine, that was like a big late time that they took before coming to survive those people. Slide. That's why this tragedy was called as human and social problems and had some consequences that we're going to list. Thousands of families lost multiple members because there are some students, some children, some uncles and aunts that they passed away, leaving behind them a deep problem. That was a great trauma. So community in Casamance was also devastated because as the deputy coming to say a while ago, so there was a lot of people that was working. And the fact that, so they passed away over the sea, of course they lose their jobs. And unfortunately, people are not really remain for like going into collaborations, and that would be positively and negatively some economic impacts. And that's what we see through that tragedy. Orphans, widows, and broken communities. Because today, if we still struggle to see Casamançais living together, so that tragedy had played a crucial role on that point. And a persistent trauma, because until now, there are some families that really suffer from that tragedy. And as you witness it today, you all are from members, from families who passed away. And until now, that trauma lives inside of you. And that's where we call the authorities, so the governments, to come to assist those families, those victims, because the trauma is still living inside of them. There are some who get some depressions, of course, because as a child, you leave your dad or your mom, exactly you're gonna be in depression because you are going to live a long life without your mother, without your father. And we also know the place that our parents represent to our life. And chronic illnesses, because there are some, the fact that the boat was going down to in the sea, there was getting some problems in their bodies, but also some problems in their psychology. Slide. And for educational and economic consequences, so imagine we lost 444 students. So of course we are going to maintain, not behind those kind of tragedies, the future of those people. So in professional terms and social terms, because they should call to be some leaders and work for their community, work for their family. Unfortunately, they passed away, so they leave behind them those problems of economic. Also a charge to the southern of Senegal, because if today we also struggle to have a development in Casamance because of that loss. And this is one of a key role that the tragedy had played on the Casamance non-development. And the loss of traders, artisans, and breadwinners, because they left Ziguinchor to go to Dakar, and through the way, they passed away, of course, coming back to their story, they should be get their families really suffered. Slide. Now we should ask together one question. And the question is why we must remember. Why we must remember of that tragedy. Because a memory is a civic act. So we talk about civism. So this kind of tragedy to be engaged inside is a civic act. So it means that we all should be engaged to that initiative to support those families, those victims who have lost their families. So to support them, to be with them, because it is like a civism act, a civic act that we should get back to them. But also to educate new generation, because there are some people, they born after 26th of September 2002. So they do not know a lot about the Joola tragedy. So we should educate those people, those children, to let them know about that history so that they can aim at working, supporting for that, for those people and the association. But also it is a demand justice and safety reforms. Because as a nation, as a democratical nation, we should remain that problem as a demand justice and safety reforms. And by that point, we call once again our authority to come back to see the main problem that currently the association of families and victims and survivors of Joola live currently, and to preserve national conscience, because it's where, as the time unfolds, we still living with this problem inside of us, and we should really be aware and let others know. It's not because I'm from Ziguinchor and I'm caring about the problem. I'm from Dakar, I don't care about that problem because it's not really up to me. Or I'm from Saint Louis, or I don't know. It's because it's a national problem that we should be getting aware to that problem. But also those nationalities was taking the board and unfortunately passed away. Slide. So on the ongoing demand, so we should know that it's a truth and justice, raise the wreck, recover remains, psychosocial support, scholarship for victims' family, socio-professional insertions of orphans. Because that's really normal. There were some children who lost their parents and they didn't know exactly what to do, because all the support, financial, psychological support that they will receive was coming from their parents. They lost it. So should we really cross our fingers and not do anything for them? No. So we should come to help them by giving some scholarship for those people, because today they are students who was like getting some formations, training at the university, and we should accompany them to really facilitate them the realization of their life. But also the social professional institutions of orphans. And the Senegalese government should be the first actor to react on that point. Because today, those students should be really hired in the government for working for their families, for working for their communities. But also, every nationalities that were losing their members should be part of those investments for helping those families, those victims, those survivors to keep on their life. Finally, we close that tribute by saying that 1,953 people was passed away. We should remember also that 444 students also passed away. we should remind that 27 young footballers were passed away. And finally, we should know that over the amount of the numbers, only 64 people were rescued, were survived. And this is unfair for the government to not do anything and for others. That's why we were still holding this initiative to call them to support and so make this for the national awareness. And I'm closing my words by saying, may we remember, learn and act together, because slide, together we should not only remember, but we should, after remembering about that tragedy, we should reflect and we should act. And that's the last word that I would like to say. Thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup. Merci encore. Vos applaudissements pour Habib. Merci mon cher. Alors, les orphelins, les pipis, quand on a une synthèse. Oui. Un instant.
Okay, I'm happy. My English is not good. It's a broken English. It's not good. I'm happy. It's a very big deal. May I want to come back in the 8th page. Thank you. Okay.
Merci à la marraine.
Oh, thank you. I'm really honored. Thank you for the question. So, for that point, we all should ask one question, is why we must remember. And by asking to ourselves that question, we should make the interpolation to ourselves by saying, because it's a memory of a civic act. So getting some memory to that tragedy is a civic act, because we cannot accept. So in Senegal particularly, and in the world in general, there is no one equal tragedy than Joola. And we should know it is part of our history. That's why I say it is a civic act for all people from Senegal to get knows about that tragedy, but also to engage in the initiative to help the victims, the families, and the survivors. It is also a way to educate new generation. A while ago, when we was outside, there was a guy who was making some presentation. I think he's the cultural guy. And one of the attendees was asking to him a question. The question was, so I don't know anything because I was born after 2002. So I can get known about that tragedy. And those kind of questions should be like answers in a deep point for letting new generations to know about that tragedy. Because we cannot let them engage without let them know first how the problem was around the world in general and Senegal in particular. And it's also a demand justice and safety reforms. The government should get some reforms to help those victims, those families, because they still get some trauma and they need psychological support. And for making through that point, they should make some reforms. And through those reforms, that will be easy for the government to help those people to really realize their will. And finally, to preserve the national conscience or the national awareness. Because there are some guys who are not really engaged because they're not from Casamance, they're not from Ziguinchor, they're not from Dakar. And it's not because I'm not from Ziguinchor, I'm not from Casamance, I'm not from Dakar, that you are not really concerned about that problem. It's because you are from Senegal, you live in Senegal, that the problem is yours. That the problem is yours. So that's what I would like really to let the people know about this point, why we must remember, why we must react, why we must reflect to the tragedy of Joola.
Voilà, merci encore sous vos applaudissements à Habib. Je rappelle que Habib Warnako Mingifi à l'université, mais on s'est connus à travers une organisation qui s'appelle Déclic, là où je travaille. Déclic signifie développement de la citoyenneté, leadership intégré et communautaire. On s'active sur les questions d'engagement communautaire, les questions de leadership jeune, mais également sur les questions d'entrepreneuriat social et tout ce qui est environnement. C'est des jeunes très engagés et qui s'investissent dans le cadre de l'amélioration des conditions de vie des populations. Donc il serait important que nous rendions la monnaie, mais également de les valoriser. C'est à travers ces moments de solennité, doyen Boubacar, qu'on puisse vraiment les valoriser. Donc merci encore sur vos applaudissements. Sans doute, s'il y a des questions, le public peut poser, on vous accorde juste 3 à 4 questions avant de passer à l'étape suivante. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Oui.